Hello and welcome to The Big Show. It's Alex Belfield talking to the big stars, and trust me, they really don't come any bigger than Bruce Welch. How are you?
You mean bigger in size, Alex? You mean 15 stone bigger or stature?
No, I'm talking about your position within show business, and I'm so fascinated by you because you've worked with everybody, you've done everything, you're going back on tour, and you're still current and selling tickets. There aren't many people your age can say that, are there?
I'm only 28 as well. Alex is 50. This is the 51st year. Fantastic, isn't it? I mean, it's unreal.
So many people come and go, but all you did was turn up and sing great songs and play great songs. That was it.
You know, you need that luck, don't you? You've got to be in the right place at the right time. You've got to have the people around you that really matter. You know, I mean, Hank and I went to school, so we had the same enthusiasm for music from the age of 14. Obviously, Cliff down here, you know, was the same enthusiasm for rock and roll music. And so when we met up in 1958, sounds a long time ago, doesn't it? It's just been phenomenal since then.
Does it bother you now that if you were to write something today, the likelihood is nobody would be interested because the politics of it all has changed so much?
Well, it's changed totally, as you say. I mean, I'm 67, so the point of me sitting down now to write a song for someone, in inverted commas, to possibly record, if they liked it, those days are over. Because you've either got production teams writing the music or artists putting their names on the songs, even though they didn't write them. And then there's a whole new kettle of fish about they want the publishing anyway. So those days of, you know, like when we started, you know, we would literally sit around and write a song. I wonder if Cliff would like this. I wonder if whoever, Olivia would like this, or Cilla Black would like this one. Or I think those sort of days in terms of songwriting are over.
And what about the sound of the band? How it's changed over the years? You've matured personally. Has that affected your playing?
Well, we're certainly better players than we were then. Obviously, I mean, Hank and I were 16. Cliff was a much older man. He was 17, and he's still much older than us, of course. But yes, we're just better players. Obviously, more experienced. We're more experienced in the ways of the studio. Although recording these days is really quite unique. I mean, this album we've just finished was recorded, you know, from Radlett in Hertfordshire, down a computer line to Perth in Australia, where Hank lives. Hank put his guitar on in Perth, sent it back to Radlett. We sent the whole thing down a computer line to Cliff, who was in Barry Gibb's studio in Miami. He put his voice on there, sent it back to Radlett. I put my harmony on top of Cliff's voice. We then send that back down the computer line to Hank in Australia. The days of 4 or 5 guys sitting in a room saying, what about this, what about that, try this, try that, seem to be over, Alex.
Do you miss that, though? Because there's something nice about all getting together, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. I think it's the best way. You know, because you bounce off each other, you know, in the same room or the same studio. You literally say, try this, Hank, or hey, that was nice, what was that you just played? And Hank would usually say, what did I just play? Because he just plays, you know.
Are you embarrassed by the sound of yourself then? Because I know we all like to grow and develop. They're obviously great tunes or we wouldn't keep playing them. Yeah. But you as an artist might want to say, no, I'll re-record that now because actually I can do it better.
Well, I mean, part of this whole new album is exactly that reason. You know, you tend to... Mind you, it's very hard to criticise 50 years later and listen to something and go, ooh, I could do that better, I could do this better. Of course you can. But what you can't get 50 years down the line is that sound of the young voice, you know, the inexperienced type voice in the studio. Nowadays, you know, we're 50 years down the line, so much of it sounds quite twee in a way. But we have to remember when we're recording it now, you know, in 2009, that this is what it was like in 1958 and 59 and 1960. And these are the lyrics of the day. I mean, I wrote Cliff's first Christmas hit, you know, of 1960, a song called I Love You. Your love means more to me than all the fishes swimming in the sea. I don't think I'd write that now.
We're going to come back and talk more about the Shadows in a moment from now, but I want to talk about your upbringing. You didn't live with your mum and dad, you were brought up by your auntie.
Yes, my mother died when I was nearly 5, so I have no recollection of her. And my father I didn't really know. I met him half a dozen times over the years. But not a normal family life. Evidently my mother, you know, on her deathbed said, would you look after the boy, which is obviously me. And she sort of dedicated the first, you know, 15 years of my life to doing that. Later on, 2 or 3, 5 years later, I was able to pay her back, as all rock stars do, buying them a home and all that sort of stuff. But she was magic. Otherwise, who knows? I could have been in a home.
Is there a small part of you now that wishes your mum could be here with you, seeing you, talking to me, and idolising this guy that's created rock and roll?
Absolutely. My mother's buried in Chesley Street in County Durham, and I go back there twice a year, as I'm sure millions of people do. Stand in front of the grave, and she has had no idea what was, what's become of me, as it were. Sounds like a sob story now. I'm trying not to sound like this, but I do go back there and have a little chat for 5 minutes and get in the car and drive all the way back home again.
And then you got interested in music and started a skiffle band. Was that the beginning of your love for music?
Lonnie Donegan was a catalyst in this country for thousands of people like Hank Marvin and myself, John and Paul in Liverpool, everybody. Because he, in 1956, with Rock Island Line and this sort of skiffle group idea, you'd read in the press saying, anybody can do this music. All you need is a couple of guitars and a washboard and a T-chest bass. And thousands of kids like Hank and I at schools went out and started their own skiffle groups. And I had a skiffle group in school. Hank had a skiffle group, a different skiffle group in the same school. And I finally managed to get him to join my skiffle group. And we were the Railroaders skiffle group, singing all Lonnie Donegan's hits and, everything, the Vipers, all that, the music of the day. But what it gave us, and skiffle didn't last very long in terms of like a career. Within a couple of years, rock and roll was here in a serious way. So we drifted from learning guitars a la skiffle, Lonnie Donegan, into listening to Buddy Holly, the Everleys, rock and roll itself, Little Richard, Fats Domino, Jerry Lee Lewis, all the different facets of early rock and roll, which still sounds sensational today.
And I suppose you could say you drifted into the Drifters.
You could. I could. We did drift into the Drifters, yeah. Hank and I had come to London. Have you got time? We've got 3 hours while I talk about this. Hank and I came to London from Newcastle on Tyne when we left school at 16 and came to look for our fame and fortune. We're still looking for it, by the way. But we went to Soho to a coffee bar called the Two Eyes Coffee Bar. Now, allegedly, Tommy Steele had been discovered there. It was certainly a place where everybody who wanted to be somebody, wanted to be a rock star, congregated. Everybody went there. And in the summer between April of 58 and the September of 1958, Hank and I sort of lived there, I think, every day of that summer of 58. And during those months, we met Jet Harris, Tony Meehan, Brian Bennett, Licorice Locke, people who would become the Shadows. So Hank and I were known as the Geordie Boys, and with a bit of luck, we were employed to sing maybe 4 nights a week, 7 in the evening till 11. I mean, when I say sing, jam sessions. Everybody jammed with everybody else. It was a bit like a jazz club type thing, in a sweaty cellar. We were sweating down there before the cavern was invented, I have to say. Anyway, on the nights that I wasn't actually playing with Hank, I used to sell orange juice down in the cellar. So one night I was selling orange juice and this band were there, and it was, I didn't know at the time, it was Cliff Richard and the Drifters, which was Cliff's, obviously his own local guys, school friends and things. And Hank wasn't there. I went home that night and I said, God, there was a good-looking, handsome boy down the thing tonight. He looked like Elvis. He had the sideburns. He had the crucifix round his neck. He had the collar up. Elvis invented the old, the collar up like this. And I never thought much more of it. So it was probably April or May, not long after we'd been there. September of 58, we're jamming down in the skiffle cellar underneath, and some guy came down, a young guy, and said he'd heard about a great guitarist in the Two Eyes. Now, there were 2 great guitarists, to be fair. Hank was certainly one of them, and a guy called Tony Sheridan. And Tony Sheridan wasn't there this particular day, which is unusual because we were always there and fiddling around and having a coffee and stuff. And he said, I'm Cliff Richard's manager. And everyone said, well, who's Cliff Richard? It was that sort of... This is September, don't forget. And he said, well, I've got a tour coming up in October, and I'm looking for a lead guitarist for Cliff's band or for his group. And so Hank played him a few licks of the day, which is... It sounds ridiculous now, Alex, but if you could play the introduction of That'll Be the Day, like Hank could, that was sensational then, because only Buddy Holly could do it, you know. And this guy called John Foster said, yeah, great. He said, would you like to do the tour? And Hank sort of said, well, I'll do it if my mate can come, which was me. And we went round the corner to Dean Street in Soho, up a flight of stairs to a tailor's shop, and there he was, the apparition himself, in the pink jacket, being fitted for the old pink jacket. And he looked at us and we looked at him, and you know, we were all pimples and greasy hair and all that stuff. And he said, can you come out to my house in Cheshunt? He lived in Cheshunt. And Hank and I got the bus out there, as you do, the Green Line bus outside the BBC. And we went out to his, he lived in a council house, you know, with his mum and dad and 3 sisters. And we went into his front room and we played a whole lot of shaking going on, That'll Be the Day, you know, or the hits of the day, really. Do you know this one? Do you know that one? And Cliff said, yeah, great. So the tour was on. And he said, guys, the tour's going to be for 3 weeks. It was a 3-week tour. And he was just a support act. He was one of the support acts, because the Kalin twins from New York, who were massive at the time with a record called When, very famous, it was number one everywhere. They were the top of the bill, and so off we went, October the 5th, 1958, outside the Cumberland Hotel in the coach. And that was the start of the 51 years.
It was a long 3 months, wasn't it?
It was a long 3 months, yeah, absolutely. And here we are, amazing.
And how did the success change you as people? Because, I mean, you were the Beatles before the Beatles were the Beatles.
No, I don't think it changes as people. We were so thrilled. I mean, Cliff was Elvis. I mean, everybody wanted to be Elvis. Unfortunately, I look like Bill Gates. But everybody, you know, people who weren't there, everybody wanted to be Elvis. You just wanted to look like him. And Cliff did, of course, with the sideburns and the good-looking boy and the, you know, the tan skin and everything, you know, the full bit. But what we had was this intense desire to be part of this new music, which was rock and roll. Obviously, it came from America. Rock and roll came from America, so all the biggest stars in the world at the time were American. But we desperately wanted to be part of it, and we put our own British spin on it, I suppose. Looking back, you know, we wrote typically British songs, I think. What's often forgotten is that Cliff and the Shadows, you know, together and as separate acts, we made it with British music. We didn't actually copy, although we copied the wanting to be a rock and roll star and the styles of guitars and getting Fenders like Buddy Holly did and all that stuff. We actually made it with British songs. You know, we weren't covering whatever was number one in America at the time.
Was there ever any lingering jealousy that it was Cliff Richard the star and you guys were in the background? You made him as much as he made you, but of course he was the name of the group.
Cliff had made Move It, which is the best rock and roll English record of all time. I don't care who it is. Fantastic record. So he would have made it. What he did create with, first of all, we were the Drifters, as you know, only for 6 months, and then we became the Shadows. What he created, or helped us create, from that 10-year period of 1958 to 1968, was he made us all feel like a band. There was never, I'm Cliff Richard, I'm the singing star, and you guys are 4 floors up, you know, find a coal hole to go and get changed in. It was very much a group. He treated us like equals, although he obviously was the boss. He was paying our wages. Not very much, I have to say, Cliff. But no, he just treated us, you know, we were Cliff and the Shadows, and it felt like that all the way through the 60s, you know. And the 60s was like Christmas every day.
And all these years later, I've been very lucky to interview him 4 times for our specials, and it's very odd when you're in the presence of someone like Cliff, because he is an enigma. He is a huge star. How do you cope with it now, being with Cliff? Because the name goes before him, doesn't it?
Well, it does, but everything you've just said is true. He is an enigma. He is a huge star. You see, because, you know, Hank and all of us, we know him so well, and we don't look upon it like that. And yet, if we walked over the road to have a cup of tea, you know, I'm sure there'd be a riot with just him walking in the street. And of course, it doesn't feel like that to us. You know, it's just Cliff, and you know, don't see him that often. But when we see him, we, you know, get a lovely cuddle, and you know, we're going to do this, and you know, and of course the tour's coming up, so it's going to be fab. Fab. What about hey? It's going to be fab.
Bruce, you mentioned earlier you're in your late 40s. What's it like?
That's my left leg. Yeah.
What's it like being a rock star again, embarking on this big arena tour, and it's going to be like the 60s again? Let's face it, you may have grown up, your audience may have grown up, but they're going to scream just as loud, aren't they?
Well, they won't scream for us. It's very interesting, Alex. Cliff has the female audience, and always has, obviously, so the screaming, and long before Beatlemania, you know, all of that stuff. But the Drifters, first of all, and then certainly the Shadows. We have all the guys want to be the Shadows. They all want to play like Hank, or play drums like Brian Bennett and Tony Meehan, or be a bass player like Chet Harris. So we had this definite split of the female audience for Cliff, and all the men, you know, all the males wanting to be a group like the Shads, you know. And it's still like that. So when we go out on tour in September, it's going to be fantastic. Because they haven't seen us together for 20 years now. It's 20 years since we played the last couple of gigs in June of 89 was the old Wembley football stadium. And it was called The Event. It was Cliff's event. 2 nights in June, which was fantastic. 82,000 people a night. See, I'm going to well up now and start bubbling. You know, it's fantastic. But it's going to be fantastic, you know, in September, October.
I don't blame you welling up, because when you think of it sat here, it's just you and me in some grotty studio. But to put yourself in that position for the moment is so rare and such a real treat, because so few people in the world get to experience that.
Well, it is. And I'll tell you what's interesting for us now is most of the places we're playing, and nearly all of the places we are playing on the tour, weren't built, of course, last time we played together. All these new arenas, you know, Newcastle and Glasgow and all Manchester, all these places weren't there. We would play the Odeons for a couple of nights, or 2 or 3 nights, or, you know, the biggest ABC, whatever it was. You know, they were tended to be cinemas, you know, converted cinemas. So there's a hell of a difference about coming out to 2,000 and coming out to 15 or 20,000, you know.
Did you always believe it would happen, that one day again you would be on stage as Cliff and the Shadows?
We hoped we would. Yeah, we did. We did, as I say, it's 20 years. And 20 years in this business, Alex, as you know, is a lifetime.
And this is a question I always ask Cliff, and the same applies to you. How does it feel knowing that years after you've gone, your music is still going to live on and be played? Because it is in that category of legendary music.
We tend not to think of, you know, obviously you don't listen to all the stations, all of the, you know, some of it's being played because we get the performances and stuff. But it's exciting. It's still exciting. The only downside, if there is a downside, which is what we were talking about at the beginning of the you know, the chat, is that it does sound ancient now. To us as artists, you'll hear, you know, whatever record we're following. You could be following Bruce Springsteen's latest epic, and then Voice in the Wilderness comes on, and you're going, hang on, I can't hear that. Are there any drums on this record? Are there any, you know, where's the bass? Where's all the backing vocals? Because it was so simple. That was so simple. And, you know, if you think that most of it was recorded, I don't want to bore your listeners, but most of it was recorded on 1 or 2 tracks of sound, you know, Cliff's voice on one track, the band on the other. And now we record on unlimited tracks. You could have 100 tracks, all down a computer.
I can't wait to hear the new album, but the memories that go with those old records, you can't buy that, can you?
We've all got those. Music, that's what's brilliant about music. It's a memory to everybody in the world. Somewhere, some song means something and takes you back 20 years, 40 years, whatever it is, 50 years, and it means something in your life. That could be a love affair, you know, your mum's favourite song, whatever. Music is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Bruce Welch is a big star of the Shadows, and thank you so much for talking to me. It's a real honour and a pleasure meeting you. I want to do you some business and help promote some of your live gigs, but there's no point because most of them are sold out.
You're going to sell some tickets now?
Well, we'll do our best.
Well, we've added some extra shows, Alex. Can I mention the extra show?
Go ahead.
Most of them are sold out, in fact. We've sold, if you're interested, well over 200,000 tickets so far. The last few seats, if you could buy them for me, that would be very appreciated. I'll mention it to Cliff.
I'll be very happy to.
Which means he'll give you another free interview next year. So that would be great.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you all to be back on stage with the Cliff?
We are seriously excited, and much more. Cliff is excited. I'll tell you what was great. We got together in December, sort of to promote the idea for the Royal Variety Show. And that was the first time in 20 years we'd actually played and been on a stage together. And he's like a kid. Cliff. He's seriously excited. He just finished his own 50th tour. He's really up for it. And it was just great fun to be playing together again. So many memories. It's like, I'll give you the dates now. Brian Bennett will be nearly 70 on the drums. That old singer we've got is 69. Hank and I are the young boys, 68. What we have never lost is wanting to get up on a stage, because that's why we came into it. At 14 years old, we used to see Elvis on something or Lonnie up on the. We wanted to be up there. The strange thing about the modern equivalent, the modern huge stars, rock bands or whatever, is they crack it. They become seriously famous with a fantastic album. The album sells 20 million or whatever, and they don't work. They've lost that. I want to get up and do it. I want to tour. I want to go to the people that bought all the albums. That seems to have gone, or gone a lot. You'll have the Stones touring every 5 years or whatever, but it's a weird thing.
Well, what you're trying to say is you and Cliff and the guys are just big show-offs, really, aren't you?
We are, yeah. We can't stop us,
Bruce Welch, thank you so much for talking to me. A great honour and a privilege. And you can find out by going to your local theatre when they're going to be in town. You tour in the UK in all big arenas. And get a seat, because it's one of those rare opportunities to see something that will probably never happen again.
It won't happen again, yeah. I mean, as I said to you, it's just the age thing, People keep saying to me, is this the final tour of 2009? And I say, well, it could be. But no, I mean, I think it's just the age is...
I'm not sure about that. We'll see. I think we'll talk again. Bruce
Welch. I'll be back here in 3 months' time saying, hey, we've got this great tour next year.
Bruce Welch, thank you so much for talking to me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.